Oh, let's see here. Hello, Daniel. Yes, I am live. I'm testing. We're at 7 firings so far, and I'm loading 41.6 grains of 4350. So we'll see how many firings it'll take before this particular little sample of Alpha Munitions 22 Creedmoor brass gives up. Gotta remember to write it down. Firing number 8, right there. It's never very easy because, unlike my normal process, I don't get to tumble, so I have to wipe off every one of them. It's kind of annoying. We're 8 firings in, and primer is still nice and tight. Neck is looking really good. I'm not going to anneal this case because I want to see just exactly when I'm going to have a split neck, if one's going to show up. So I'm going to have to take it out and trim it about every 10th firing. Average velocity of about 3450-ish. So that's firing number 10 there. I am going to go trim it after I size it here. The case is still looking really good. I think I am going to go ahead and clean up the primer pocket a little bit too. Just give it a nice trim on the bottom. Well, it looks like I can go a little bit more than 10 firings because it cleaned up really nice, but I obviously didn't take much off of it in terms of length. So we should be right in at my normal, yeah, 1.915, so we're looking good on length. And I did get about 80% clean up on the pocket there, so still nice and tight. Seems like my velocity is a little low because I'm using some lube on the inside of the neck here and it's not grabbing that bullet very hard, so about 20 foot per second or so slow from shot to shot. So that's really not that big of a deal. Pocket is still nice and tight. Boy, I don't know what's going to go first, the pocket or end up with a split neck or something, but this is this brass feels like new still. And that it has 11 firings on it, so. But I'm not annealing it. Okay, that's 12 firings. You guys can help me count. Everybody knows I hate math. Somebody should tag Alpha Munitions in the comments. See how far their little champion will go today. $13, yay. Get a little squirt of alcohol here to speed things up. Oh, it stinks. Stinks like alcohol. There we go. Keep the case nice and clean between firings. Still no sign of the primer pocket opening up. Primer pocket feels just like it felt on the second firing. Fourteen firings. Hey, Fire Diz, how are you? Long time no see. I need a helper to come and scrub my case between firings. Pretty significant wind switch out there. All right, we're at 15 firings now. I'm trying to keep that neck nice and clean so I can see if there's any splits in it or anything. Haven't seen anything yet. And I guess for whoever's interested, I'm not really testing accuracy because the case changes quite a lot, and I'm not putting it through a normal process where I'm tumbling it or anything. But at 300 yards, I've got like a 2 3/4 inch group down there. So despite the fact that I'm not shooting for accuracy and I'm not really caring about how precise I'm being behind the rifle, it is shooting extremely well through all of these firings. It's good enough to impose your will on whatever target you'd want to be shooting at, that's for sure. Primer pocket is still fantastic after 15 firings. That's 16. Well, we're definitely in it for the long haul here. This thing is not showing any signs of weakening. So I don't know how many dozen firings it's going to take, but apparently a few. Oops. I need that one still. Chronograph numbers are looking good still. Not any real serious deviation. The averages are hanging in about the same, which that's kind of strange. Usually by this many firings, I'd see something move a little bit there on the velocity. So might just be getting lucky, and there could be enough of the carbon inside getting sloughed out. 4350 is pretty clean burning too, so I guess that doesn't surprise me too much. Squeaky clean. And stinky. Okay, I think, yeah, that's 17 firings, right? Camera pocket is still good. On my finger there, I'll get that off. No, don't need to have any lube going in the chamber. That's not good. 34, 26. That one was a little bit low. A little bit lower velocity. I think that's the bottom end on the extreme spread so far. But we'll see what the numbers look like when we get done. Oh, I think I forgot to mark that down when I came back. So yeah, that's 18 firings now. I didn't have the chronograph set up properly, so the first 2 firings didn't register on there. That's how I can keep that straight. But you can see after all those firings, we've still got a good looking base there. No real issues. The neck is looking good still. No split neck. Shot 19. What is everyone's guess on how far this case will go? How many firings do you think we'll see out of it before I have a problem? Whether it be loose primer pocket or a split neck, or so how many firings do you think it'll go? And what do you think the failure point will be? Bullet seating depth is still right on the money. That's the 20th firing right there. So that's 20 firings on this case. Let's see what kind of overall length change we've got here. I did trim it already at the 10th firing. I need to get that primer out of there before I can do this. So we'll go ahead and size it, and then I'll take our measurement. No guesses, guys? No guesses at what the failure point's going to be? How many firings will go and what's going to fail first? Somebody's probably got a guess. Okay, take a look at our overall length here. All right, so in those 10 firings, we picked up about 2.5 thousandths of length. So, testament to the 30-degree shoulder there. These 30, 35, and 40-degree shoulder cases, they do not tend to grow a lot between firings. So that's really nice to see. Oops. That's 21 firings right there. We'll see how many they go, but the primer pocket is showing no sign of loosening, so I almost think that we're going to end up with a split neck by the time we discover where this thing's going to stop functioning and stop performing properly. But we shall see. Everything looks really good on it so far. Base is looking good too. Grew another 0.5 thousandth there. Primer pocket is still good, folks. Amazingly. I mean, it literally hasn't changed. Obviously, I'm priming with the CPS here. So, if there was something off about how that primer was going in there, I would certainly be able to feel it. And thus far, the very first primer that I inserted, it felt a little tighter. But from the second firing all the way through now to the 21st, I think I wrote that down. Yeah. So that's 21 firings, and it doesn't. It feels the same from the second firing to the 21st firing. So that's a pretty big deal. That's a lot of firings. That's a lot of value for your dollar when you're buying brass to get that many firings. And I should point out that this is not a neck turn chamber. I'm running about 5.5, 6 thousandths of clearance on these necks. So it isn't as if they're just not getting worked. The necks are getting worked. And I have not annealed this piece at all. So it just came out of the box, and we're loading it and shooting it until failure. Okay, that's 22 firings. Get another squirt of alcohol here. Okay, pocket is still good. Okay, that's 23 firings and still going strong. I think we're finally having the pocket. That one's just a tiny bit more loose, so I'm gonna have to inspect the pocket here this next firing. And it looks like we are growing by about a half a thou per firing. So we've gone, this will be the 14th firing, so I think I'm gonna go clean that primer pocket out a little bit again. There's quite a lot of buildup in there. So every time you shoot, you get a little bit of priming compound built up in the bottom of the pocket, and the brass in the bottom of the pocket does flow a little bit too. So when you put this many firings on a piece of brass, it's always a good policy to stay on top of the trimming and to stay on top of your primer pocket expansion. So we're seeing, by the time I get the 25th firing on it, we should be 5 to 5.5, maybe even 6 thousandths of growth in overall length. So we'll go trim that off, and then we'll get the primer pocket uniformer in there and get that pocket squared up again and get all that gunk out of there. So this should be firing number 24 here. Butterfingers. Okay, the base is still looking good. Well, hello, Eric Trump. Thank you for joining our live stream. So that's 24 firings. Okay, yeah, I think that's what it was, because that time putting the primer in felt just as good as it did the few other times, so I think there might be some debris in there. So this will be firing 25. After this, we'll go ahead and go trim that up. Boy, the wind is really switching out there. Okay, that's 25 firings. Let's take some measurements here and see where we're at. Now, full-length sizing is always going to show you your real growth, because the brass is going to be flowing right out the top. It has to go somewhere. So it's better to take all your measurements after you've sized to make sure you're getting a real representation of what's going on. We'll get her cleaned up good, do a nice close inspection of the neck. Okay, 1.920 on the nose, so yeah, we're growing about half a thou per firing, or close to it. It'll vary from shot to shot, but 15 firings ago we trimmed back to 1.915, and so we've grown a total of 5 thousandths across 15 firings. That's good case design, folks. The 30-degree shoulders on these cases, it's definitely good. But as you can see what I'm talking about, all of the buildup, I know that the stream quality leaves a bit to be desired, but there's a lot of buildup in that. And the square corner at the bottom of the primer pocket is getting radiused out by all that gunk in there. And I can tell that it's affecting our primer seating depths as well. So I'm going to go trim this case back about 5 thousandths and clean up that pocket. Okay. Oh, yep, we're back down. See, 1.916. So we've got a little bit of growth down here. That represents about 1,000th of growth down here in the body. So that tells me that the brass is growing a little bit more than the sizing die is overcoming right now. And so we're reaching a point where that expansion has to be coming from down here. So we'll see how many more firings we get. We're at 25 right now. And now that this primer pocket is clean, yeah, I mean, the primer pocket is still nice and tight. That felt just like the second one, the second firing. So, and these are large primers too. These are not small rifle primers. So because they're large, the small rifle primer brass is probably going to do even better if they come out with a batch of that. But they have a tendency to provide brass both ways, Alpha. So sometimes they'll provide it with small first, and other times they'll do the large first. But they have a tendency to provide it both ways. So, well, let's get firing number 26 on here, and let's keep going. Now that we're trimmed back down to dimension, we don't have to worry about the chamber pinching that brass and causing a overpressure situation. We're sitting good. And we gotta check that seating depth real quick just to make sure we're still looking good. Yeah, 2.064. So, I mean, 2.065 is my dimension that I'm shooting for. So because there's no uniformity to my process, I'm not running it as a large batch. The differences that you see from one loading to the next are more extreme than you would if you were just simply doing it all in one fell swoop, doing 50 or 100 pieces of brass or something. Well, looks like our lab radar went to sleep. Better wake it up. Can you guys hear that impact of the steel? That seems really loud today. The wind's blowing it right back at me. Okay. Firing number 26, and away we go. Normally during this kind of testing, I'll try to give the brass a break and I'll anneal it every 10th firing or so, but I'm refusing to do that because I want to see just exactly. Frankly, I don't know that this test would ever end if I did that. So setting the bar pretty high here, and 26 firings in and we're still going strong, so that's quite a big deal. And we didn't even grow a measurable amount on the brass that firing. Primer pocket still feels good, so we will proceed. And again, we're loading 41.6 grains of H4350 behind this 80 grain Berger. And that is firing number 27. And everything still's looking good here. Nothing's split. Everything's looking good. It's funny, after all these firings, you see the base of this case tends to get a little shiny, much more so than it was, but and still no measurable growth on the brass. Primer pocket's getting a normal amount of residue in there, but not enough to cause any problems. Firing 28. So nice to be able to use the Forster coax in this situation, because I can just swap my seating die with my sizing die and move right along through this process very quickly. I do have another station over here. Maybe I could just get another press, populate that other station, and then I wouldn't have to change dies at all. But then I'd probably get confused about which press I was supposed to be rolling up to. Primer pocket's still good. Not really experiencing any heavy bolt lift or anything, so that's nice. Case is behaving very favorably. So it's not just firings. I mean, I still only have like a 4-inch group down there at 300 yards, so it's pretty good. Fire Diz says 20 inches of snow in the hills. Did you get any? No. It is drier than a popcorn fart up here, and I mean that in any capacity. It is dry, dry, dry. We could use some moisture to fight off these prairie fires, but we don't seem to be getting a reprieve yet. Let's see, did I write that down? What fire are we on here? 27, so I should be at 29. 27, 28, 28, yeah, so I forgot to write one down. There we go. Finally have a 1/2 thousandth in overall length growth there. Primer pocket still feels good. Oops, I can't seat bullets with that one. I can try, but I don't think my decapping assembly would appreciate it very much. So that is firing number 30 right there. And I don't see any signs of split necks or anything of the sort. So we're still looking good there. Do another little squirt of alcohol here. You don't want to have any lube going into your chamber. It's pretty important that this brass be able to get a nice firm grip against the chamber wall. So when you're doing these one at a time type jobbies here, it's really important to get all that lube off the case. You don't want any of it getting into your chamber and causing that brass to behave undesirably, because that will give you a lot of bolt thrust and it will exacerbate the problem. It'll give you a false positive on the pressure. You get a lot more ejector wipe and ejector ring that way. And then too, because of all that thrust, your primer pockets will have a tendency to open up a little bit faster than they might otherwise. So make sure you keep that lube off your ammo. Keep your brass nice and clean. Firing number 31, right there. got a total of 1,000th of brass growth across those 6 firings. So the amount of brass growth is slowing down. That would seem to indicate that the brass might be getting a little harder. Might not want to flow as readily. So maybe we're gonna come up against a split neck here at some point. I think I'm gonna go ahead and top off the Prometheus here. I think we're good in the trickler department yet. Recoil trigger for the lead radar didn't like the rifle being bounced around like that. So we're at 30, 32. Okay, that's 32 firings. .32 firings and still going strong. That's pretty amazing for a 22 Creedmoor. I mean, you're kind of accustomed to having a lot of firings on, say, Lapua 6BR or something like that. That is not my sizing die. The 32 firings out of 22 Creedmoor brass, pushing an average velocity of somewhere above 3440, 3450, something like that. That you don't see a lot of. Usually the brass is not up to it. So this Alpha OCD brass is a whole other thing when it comes to how it is behaving. Primer pocket is still good. Firing number 33. Right there. Primer pocket's still good. I mean, is it ever going to quit? This is a lot of firings. This is a lot of firings on 22 Creedmoor. 34 firings. If it makes that noise, that means it's clean, right? Well, it looks clean. Clean enough. Primer pocket's still good. That's firing number 35. Yeah. So, still going. Wow. Who thinks we'll hit 50? Anybody think we'll hit 50 firings? For those of you that just tuned in, this is a test batch of the Alpha Munitions OCD 22 Creedmoor. And we've gone 35 firings so far. So we're about 2/1000ths of overall growth now. And the primer pockets are looking pretty gross, so I'm going to go ahead and give these another pass on the primer pocket uniformer, and I'll go ahead and trim them back down too. So we'll just do that every 10-15 firings to keep things behaving properly. Okay. 1.916, so we're right back down to our good dimension there. And we got a full cleanup on the primer pockets this time. So that's positive proof that if you shoot these cases enough, that primer pocket's going to move, it's going to expand. And that's a dimension that you need to keep on top of in order to keep your primer seating depths where you want them to be. So I definitely recommend uniforming your pockets. And so every time I go clean that primer pocket up and then go to seat the next primer, it feels brand new again. It feels just like the second firing. And we are 35 firings in. Pretty obvious to me at this point that I'm going to have to start another stream, because this one will only allow me to go for an hour. Meadowlark sitting on top of my steel target. He's not going to like this one bit. Having a bullet hit the steel underneath your butt at 3,450 foot per second, that's enough to get you to fly off. Sorry, little guy, but you can't be sitting there when I'm testing. All right. So that's firing number 36, right? Yeah, 36. Important safety tip. Do not try to size your brass with your seating die. Or vice versa. It just doesn't work out, no matter how many times you try it. Pocket's still good. Oh, need to refill my bullet tray here. I'm empty. Firing number 37 there. Okay. Yep, still no split necks or anything. Case looks good. And case head's getting shined up a little bit, but that's to be expected. I do have some pretty severe wind gusts and swirls happening out there, so. Oh yeah, forgot that I ran out of bullets. Good thing I have more. Bullets. Breakfast of Champions. Okay, that's firing 38. Yeah, I wouldn't eat the bullets either. Brittle says, I wouldn't eat those. Smart advice. Smart advice in the chat. Primer pocket still feels good. So we will proceed. Firing 39. Thank you for the play-by-play, Brittle. Except you made a typo. It's not 3250 foot per second, it's 3450 foot per second. Primer pocket still feels good, so on to our 40th firing we go. Firings. Primal Finish says, Brittle's been eating too many burgers. They're affecting, the heavy metals are affecting his brain. Winter Speed says 39 times without a trim. No, I'm trimming them every 10 to 15 firings. Obviously, it's not the brass's fault that it's growing to some degree. So far, I have trimmed them 2 or 3 times, I think. And I'm also staying on top of the primer pocket. And I'm uniforming the primer pocket the same time that I go to trim it. So the last time I trimmed it was at 35 firings. We're at 40 right now. And we have about 1,000th of brass growth overall in those 5 firings. Because obviously it's expected to have to trim your brass at some point, especially when you got this many firings on it. And the primer pockets, it's natural that the floor of the pocket will move and drift out a little bit as you subject it to this kind of abuse. Nothing that a primer pocket trim won't take care of. What do we got there? Is that 36 or wait, 40, 41? Is that right? Yeah. Firing number 41 right there. Brittle says the 140s are like big M&Ms. That just ain't right. I don't know when I started this stream, but eventually Instagram's going to kick me off here. So when I see that happen, I'll just go live again right away and you guys can keep following along. Squeak, squeak, squeaky clean. Primer pocket's still good, so away we go. .42 firings. And where it stops, nobody knows. Everyone go tell your friends, because this is noteworthy. Have them come and tune into the Primal Rights channel on Instagram to witness potential history in the making, because I've never even heard of 22 Creedmoor brass that went this far. And the more people are watching now, the fewer people that can claim that I lied about it later. Primer pocket's still good. .43 firings. That's a bunch. I mean, the vast majority of these shots are going into such a tiny little cluster at 300 yards. I mean, most of them are falling within an inch of each other. There's about 1.5 inches that I'm just beating the tar out of down there at 300 yards. And every once in a while, one round is coming out. Had a massive gust of wind come up, and of course I'm inside here, so I couldn't really feel it. And some clouds ran over, and I couldn't really see it either in the mirage. And had a couple of A couple of shots come out, but otherwise it's absolutely crazy how consistent of a downrange performance I'm seeing when I'm not using proper methodology. I'm not doing my normal process. I'm not annealing, and I'm just firing these cases over and over. There's 85 to 90% of the bullets that I'm firing are landing in something the size of a golf ball at 300 yards. So it's not just that it's taking the abuse. It's not just taking the firings. It's extremely accurate. My poor steel. 80 grain Berger's doing 3450 is not very friendly to steel, and landing that many of them in close proximity is, generally speaking, pretty tough on the old steel plate. Okay. So that's, we got 44? Yeah. 44 firings. Wow. Boy, quite the squeeze on that one. I don't know what the deal was there. Primer pocket's still good, so we forge ahead. Yeah, I don't know, Brittle. 47. I think we're going to be cruising right past 47. At this point, my guess is something like 60. 60, 65. I don't even know. It's hard to venture a guess because, I mean, nothing's really changing. Okay, that's 45. 45 firings. Would you ever have thought? 45 firings out of 22 Creedmoor brass. That's the power of the Alpha OCD 22 Creedmoor right now, folks. That's something. Oh. Oh! And there it is. Split neck. Split neck with no annealing. You can see it right here. 45 firings right on the nose. And we've got a crack in the neck. The tiniest little crack. I almost missed it. 45 firings. And that's 45 firings. And we end up with a split neck. That means if I was annealing, it would have kept going. If I was annealing, we would have still been going. Excuse me. Whew. The primer pocket still feels. I'm going to go ahead and resize this, and I'm going to press a primer in. I'm going to go clean the pocket up. I'm going to trim it. Actually, no, I'm not going to trim it. I'll leave it how it is. But I'm going to clean the pocket up and put a primer in there, and I want to see how that. I want to see how that primer pocket feels here after firing number 45. I'll bring you guys over there with me so you can see this. But will it shoot 2 more times? Yeah, I could probably, make it shoot 2 more times. But I don't think I want to do that because the split neck is not, it's almost imperceptible. I mean, it's the tiniest little hairline fracture, and it doesn't come out the top. It's just down there right at the neck-shoulder junction. And so if I fired it 1 more time, then it would probably split all the way up. But it's the tiniest little fracture right above the neck-shoulder junction. So let's go. I'm gonna bring you guys with. And we're just gonna go clean up the pocket on this thing. How these buttons work. Okay, there we go. That's pretty good. Nice. Okay. So now we got the primer pocket cleaned back up. And I'll set you guys here so you can have a look. And we'll just see how this seating goes. So we've got our CCI 200 in there with a nice sleek cleaned pocket. So, okay, there's the primer just impacted the bottom. So how much force can I apply here to get this primer in? There it goes. I'm having to pull on it pretty good. Yeah, so you can see it didn't just fall in there. I had to put some pressure on it in order to get it in there. So that means our primer pocket survived flawlessly. And if I would have been annealing, then who knows how many firings I could have got on this thing. Now, let's just check our average. Obviously, not doing proper prep the whole time on this is kind of a problem. But let's take a look at what we've got. So 42 shots recorded. And you can see our numbers there. Extreme spread of 58, standard deviation of 14. Now that's with no annealing and lubed case necks and a bunch of things that are way wrong that I would never recommend. Yeah, Brittle says, if you were annealing, I'd see you next week when you finish up. Yeah, he's about right there. Yeah, so that is some crazy performance there, folks. You can see the highest velocity recorded, but the average was 3440 almost, and the highest was 3469 and lowest 3411. And it really didn't cause any problems downrange. I'll see if I can line this scope up to give you guys a look of what's down there. I don't know how effective this is going to be, but can it happen? Can I get it lined up? Well, I can, but you can't see anything. That's terrible. Okay. Well, that is exciting. Stage one. Stage one of the test is done. We now know the Alpha OCD. We know just how many firings it can take before it starts having a problem, and we know that it's not the primer pocket, and not at this velocity anyway. 41.6 grains of 4350, pushing an 80 grain Berger 22 caliber bullet at 3,440 foot per second on average. So that is a tremendous number of firings, 45 firings, and then to see the tiniest little fracture and have a split neck. Well, you know me better than to just go ahead and assume things. So we got the Alpha OCD here. Next up today, I'm going to do the exact same test, except this time we're going to run Peterson 22 Creedmoor. And we're going to see, I'm going to try to develop a load that matches the velocity of what we're seeing in here. So I'm going to get back to that same place, 3,440 foot per second on average, or right around there. And I'm going to perform the exact same test on the Peterson brass. And I'm going to end this stream and find that load, make sure that we're still in the ballpark here on the powder charge. And then I'm going to perform the exact same test. And I'm going to start that live stream up later. So we'll see you guys back here in about half an hour to an hour. And bring your friends. Let's see how the Peterson stacks up against the Alpha OCD 22 Creedmoor. Thanks for tuning in, guys.